So thank you everyone for joining us today. I request everyone to please put your phones on silent in case you haven't as we begin our program. Good evening to everyone and thank you for joining us on this roundtable on making PMR a net carbon neutral region. It's hosted by the Energy, Environment and Climate Change Program at Pune International Center. My name is Siddharth Bhagwat. I'm the team leader at PIC for the PMR project and I'll be the host for this evening. Let me first begin by introducing the dignitaries on the dais. We have with us Professor Amitav Mallik, Padma Shri, who's a retired laser scientist and a former member of the National Security Advisory Board. He's a trustee at PIC and he heads the Energy, Environment and Climate Change Program. We also have with us the chairperson for today's event, Ms S Chockalingam, the Director General of YASHADA. Mr. Chockalingam is the former Pune Division Commissioner and has been part of various expert committees with Niti Aayog. Thank you, sir, for not only chairing this event, but also helping us host the event at YASHADA. In the audience today, we have all the member organizations, experts that have helped us conduct this feasibility study. We have members from the Climate Collective Pune, from government officials, from the PMRDA, PCMC, PMC, and we also have PIC trustees on board with us. I'd also like to welcome our Commissioner, Shri Vikram Kumar. Thank you, sir, for coming, and we're happy to take things forward in the action phase. And Dr. Ajit Ranade for coming for this event. Thank you, sir. May I now request Professor Amitav Mallik to give his opening remarks.
Namaskar and welcome on my behalf and on the behalf of Pune International Center. Unfortunately, the President and Vice President are both occupied and not able to be joined with us, but they are with us in spirit. And we are all together taking up this very challenging task. What we brought out in January 2020 was a policy paper on making Pune net carbon neutral by 2030. But let me go back a little bit to give the genesis of this whole program. PIC started in September 2011, and in 2012, one of the first conference held was again, yours truly was the culprit. I organized a conference on energy, environment and security, national security, and managed to get Dr. Kalam to preside over it. I'm mentioning it because in his speech at the end, he said, it's fantastic that you people are all doing this wonderful work. Climate change is very serious, but whatever you want others to do, you must show that you can do yourself. So he looked at me and he said, he used to call me buddy. I worked with him for quite some time. He said, you have to prove that your city can take a lead. So what we are trying to do this year goes back to advice from Dr. Kalam. That was after he was president in 2012. This initiative was started by me around 2017 or so, and the first event we held in this very hall was about climate literacy that was chaired by Dr. Mashelkar, our president. Today we are again in this hall as a next step after the 2020 paper, which discussed along with milestones and solutions for making Pune carbon neutral by 2030. It looked like a crazy idea, and many people wrote us off. But today we are at a stage, after the two years lull of the COVID, we have conducted a detailed feasibility study, both technological status as well as tech-fin analysis. And we did not do it alone, we did it in collaboration with our many friends. To begin with, I have created a climate collective Pune where about 12 or 13 of the experts and NGOs in Pune are members. So they collaborated with us. British Petroleum India was a major partner who collaborated and also provided some funding. Symbiosis as a university, and of course that time our friend Gurudas, who is now PIC member. So Dr. Gurudas, on behalf of Symbiosis, made a huge contribution, and we had many experts, very well established. I can name at least 25, but one of them, of course, is Dr. Nitant Matre, who is an energy expert. So I don't want to get into all that name, etc. But I will use this opportunity to highlight what we have been able to do and what is the challenge. Can I have the... Now, this is what we are going to do, and this is what will be discussed further both by our advisors, Dr. Nulkar and Dr. Mathur. But before that, I wanted to show you a graph that brings out the totality. Can you go back to the first one? So, the final graph shows that if we allow business as usual to continue, the carbon equation, that is CO2 equivalent emissions, will keep on rising steeply. And the gap between the sequestration capacity and the total carbon emission will be rising so fast that actually they will be impossible to bridge the gap. We all say plant trees and this and that, but plant trees can do, of course they will help, but that's not the kind of solution that can bridge the gap. So obviously we are looking at artificial sequestration by using technology. And in the presentation which Siddharth will make soon after this, you will see the gap will become so large in the business as usual that even artificial sequestration will not bridge it, because artificial sequestration, which is still in R&D stage, innovation stage, even after it comes to practical stage, scaled up, there will be a cost. And that cost has to be manageable, and therefore the gap to be bridged has to be manageable. It is that kind of a scenario in which we are holding this today's conference, roundtable, and we could not have asked for a better mentor and guide to do this than Mr. Chockalingam. And I'm so glad, sir, that you agreed to chair this session, because he has got vast experience in solving problems. Of course, he's been associated with PIC for quite some time. So what we will discuss today is not just a problem, but actually solutions. Unfortunately, the stakeholders for making those solutions work cannot be PIC, cannot be universities, cannot be climate scientists. It has to be the stakeholders of the government officials, the government itself, the thought leaders, the change makers, the policy makers, and so on and so forth. Fortunately, in the previous dispensation, we had a young environmental minister who was very active with us. Now, with the change of government, we'll see how we can energize the new team, whatever it be. But first of all, we have to energize the policy makers and the government officials who can make a difference in Pune. To that extent, I'm very happy that Mr. Vikram Kumar, the Commissioner of Pune Metropolitan Region, is here, and people like him are really going to make the difference. We can only show the way, be the mentor, help out the pathway, but I think that now we have come to a stage where there is action required, and this whole exercise is about that. I think I've said enough, so I'll stop here, but just let me share the plan of the round table. So after me, Siddharth Bhagwat, who is the team coordinator for this project from EECC, from AIC, will present the findings of the feasibility studies. It's quite a detailed document, and so it's quite a challenge to put it together in 10-12 minutes. But after that, we have our advisors, Dr. Nulkar and Dr. Mehta. They will present what are the solutions on which we have to work on and what are the challenges. After that, I'll request our chairperson, DG YASHADA, to share his thoughts, and then we'll open the meeting for discussion. At the end again, we will conclude it, summarize it. My colleagues are taking notes. We are covering on video camera the entire session. So whenever you speak afterwards, please identify so that the camera and the audio captures your name. And we will create a comprehensive document to cover this today evening's event. Thank you. And thank you very much for coming in good number, and I look forward to a very useful session.
Thank you very much, Professor Mallik. So, I'll quickly go over the key outcomes of the Phase 1 study. That's the feasibility assessment that we conducted over the last 9 months, collaborating with organizations present here today. So, there's two things I'd like the audience to keep in mind. During the first presentation, when we present the key outcomes, and the second one being presented by Dr. Nulkar and Dr. Mehta, I'd really like you all to take a note and also contribute during the open discussion on how you see your organization contributing in this action plan as we go about implementing each of these pilot projects. So, let me give you the context behind the study. So, we published a policy paper back in January 2020, as most of you already know. But the idea behind creating a feasibility assessment was to understand the practical approach we need to take to decarbonize the region. And understand how can we get the needle turning in terms of creating actions. But before I move on, I'd also like to give a special thank to the BP team for supporting this study from day one. We have one of the representatives come here today, Mr. Malloy, and also the rest of the team is joining online from Mumbai. So these are the expert organizations that have collaborated with us. Seagreen Solutions, Dr. Nitin Mate, if you could raise your hand, please. Thank you. He analyzed the electricity sector. Symbiosis International University from SCHMRD department, Dr. Sen and Dr. Bhagwat. From Prakriti Organics, we have Mr. Santosh. From Pune Knowledge Cluster, we have Rashmi ma'am and Dr. Kester. From the National Chemical Laboratory, we had Director Lele and Dr. Magesh Nandagopal contributing in the study. For the infrastructure sector, we collaborated with VK International, Dr. Kester, Kanchan and Shivali. We had Pune Metropolitan Foundation conduct the analysis of the waste sector, CCP Environmental Foundation for the water energy nexus in the electricity from Ms Vaishali Patkar. And finally, Symbiosis International University Energy and Environment Program. We had a couple of students come here. They helped us with the financial analysis for some projects. So, all in all, we are very fortunate to have these inputs from leading experts, and it helped us to really understand the ground reality of what it takes to really decarbonize the region. I mean, we are talking about reducing a huge amount of carbon emissions. So when the study started back in October, we understood the real technicalities on ground. And let's not forget, there are already many initiatives taken by PMC, PCMC and PMR and the Division Commissioner's Office that have done great work in reducing carbon emissions. So we took that into account. We analyzed what projects already have been taken place and what more can we add to it. But yes, having said that, there are gaps in the report which you may find regarding data collection and so forth, but I'll cover it in the next slide. Yeah, so when you create a decarbonization plan, what do you actually start from? We need to create some sort of baseline or a foundation to begin with. So we first analyze the status quo in each of these sectors. These are the 4 major sectors contributing to the emissions in PMR. So for electricity, we analyze the current consumption patterns in PMR we got the data from MSEDCL. That comes under scope 2 emissions, that's indirect emissions happening outside PMR. Then transport and waste cumulatively have scope 1 emissions. These are the emissions directly happening within the geographic region of the Pune Metropolitan Area. So here we analyze how many cars we have on the road, what types of vehicles we have on the road, what is the amount of fuel being consumed in this region, and so forth. And finally, for infrastructure, we analyze not only the embodied energy, that's the emissions caused during the construction phase of the buildings, but also during its operational phase, in its entire lifespan. But for the scope of carbon accounting, we have taken only the yearly embodied emissions. So cumulatively, in PMR, we emit 25 million tons of carbon emissions each year. That is a staggering figure. If you want to know more about the things we have considered in this carbon analysis, I would like to refer you to the report, the final report, point number 2.4. We have given a detailed analysis in that. So coming to the approach, once we understood the status quo, we then decided, okay, let's analyze things with a perspective. So we analyzed the business as usual scenario, assuming that no action is taken in each of these sectors. And in comparison, we analyzed a rapid climate action scenario where we assume that all the recommendations given in the report have been taken in a timely manner. And we were able to do this only because we got the support from government officials, where we collected a lot of data regarding the consumption patterns in PMR. The consultants and experts helped us through the secondary and tertiary analysis for different sectors. So the PIC team was able to analyze pinpointedly on how we can decarbonize each of the sectors mentioned. Where data was not available, we conducted scenario analysis, especially in the transport sector, where you can't really say which vehicle is being driven for how long and how many emissions it's causing. So you have to make certain assumptions in creating such a model. So in the transport sector, we assumed if 10% of EVs come in the market, how many emissions are we reducing? All the way up to 40%. And we realized, unless you have 40% of electric vehicles on road that are entirely powered by renewable energy, we will not end up saving carbon emissions looking at the entire emissions happening in the transport sector. We'll speak about it more detail later on. So this is the key outcome from the report, what Professor Mallik was mentioning in his opening remarks. On the left, you see in the year 2020, we are currently causing 25 million tons of emissions. And the two scenarios that I spoke about, the BAU, the red line, you see the emissions are almost doubled by the end of this decade. In contrast, a climate action scenario is reducing only 5 million tons. Why do you think that is? So we later understood that because we considered increase in consumption patterns, increase in population, increase in development in the region, we don't have such a massive savings in the carbon emissions at the end of this decade. And that is a big contrasting result to the policy paper that spoke about aiming for carbon neutrality by 2030. So this was one of the main advantages of doing a feasibility assessment, is to practically understand what we need to do to decarbonize. So we first need to stop the growth of emissions, make them in a tapering plateau or stop its growth, and then talk about reducing it. So, of course, if you've gone through the report in detail, you must have seen that there are some limitations, starting from what kind of data we collected, carbon accounting, kiska kiya, kiska nahi kiya, and so forth. We've mentioned all of that in the report. It's not 100% perfect. It's different from all the climate action reports that you've read so far, because our focus is mainly on reducing carbon emissions. I won't go through all of them, you can read in the report, but in the financial analysis,
I'd just like to add here that what he showed as 2030, if the same graph is extrapolated to 2050, by which time most of the world will go carbon neutral, pledge. We, as a PMR, is almost as big as a European country. And we will have more than 10 cities with more than 10 million population. So the intention is here that as a PMR, if you set a model which other cities will follow, we become the driving force, then the entire India can lead. And given the trend that are there, India may become the largest emitter by 2050. So it's very important for us to get to this and do what we want to do.
Thank you, sir. Very important points. So quickly just going through this slide, one of the major things missing in the report currently is the financial analysis. If you ask us what does it cost to become carbon neutral, I say let's find out in the coming phase. So the feasibility assessment helped us identify targets, interim targets, periodic targets for the short term and the long term. In terms of reducing the overall GHG emissions, how much renewable energy we want in the grid, improving the energy efficiency, increasing natural sequestration, and of course, how many electric vehicles do we actually want on the road that are powered by renewables. So you have the summary and the presentation right there on your table. If you'd like to read in detail, please refer to that. Since we're short on time, I'd now like to request Dr. Nulkar and Dr. Nityanth Mate to please present the action phase.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so that was what we did in the last 6 months, and while that one single graph hides all the hard work which is done not only by PIC but all the other organizations, it certainly tells a lot about what needs to be done. And therefore, the second part of this project is how do you put the learnings into action? And that's what we're going to talk about in the next 12 minutes or so. So, so what is the next phase going to do? It's going to be 3 sets of activities. One will be pre-project activities, where we are going to do things before we start work on the pilot projects. Second is about the activities which are going to happen as the projects start. And the third will be the concurrent activities which are going to happen throughout the project, entire period of 2 years. So yeah, we're going to conduct local surveys, set 20-25 targets, optimize the project management and implementation process, create DPRs. Now, one of the things which you need to do if you want to put a good pilot project in place is to have a detailed project report in place, and that's something which is extremely important. We are going to hire agencies which will do the DPRs for us, and those are the ones which we are then going to implement. Then pitching projects to appropriate stakeholders. None of this will be possible without the help of agencies like MSEDCL, PMR, PMRDA, PMC, PCMC, MPCB, PMPML, so on and so forth. We have a host of agencies which are going to be actually partnering with us in implementing the projects. In the next stage, we will have the actual project sign-off, where we will actually sign off the project while we are looking at the funding agencies and funding programs. And finally, the concurrent activities are going to be the monitoring and the auditing of the entire process. So starting with the first one, what is the first one? So our first program is going to be energy efficiency. We know, and the Economic Survey of India lists out what is the kind of energy loss which is happening just in transmission and distribution, which also includes non-metered loss, which is theft. There is a significant amount of infrastructure development which needs to be done to really reduce the energy, to improve the energy efficiency. But we still have a lot of scope within the city, and that's what we're going to look at. So for the next 6 slides which you will see will have the same format. We will talk about the targets, we will have potential pilot projects, and we'll have the stakeholders and beneficiaries who are going to act upon it. And I'm not going to read out all that, but Nityanth and I will just give you an overview, because each one of you will have a copy of these slides which are important for the question and answer session which is required. So Nityanth, if you would like to add a couple.
Yeah. Actually, if you look at what BE has said, that if you want to reduce energy consumption, energy efficiency is the first thing that you want to do. And typically all over India, if you take a general viewpoint, up to 30% energy consumption can be reduced just by implementing proper energy efficiency measures. Now, we always start looking at, okay, what is my alternative source of energy? Before doing that, the first step is actually to reduce consumption. And that's the focus that one should do. And our initial findings in PMR tell us that if you go through some top 5 to 10 energy conservation opportunities, you could probably end up reducing consumption by about 22 to 25%. So these are low-hanging fruit, and I think we should, as a society, focus on this and reduce energy consumption by implementing those.
Yeah,
and
we're going to appeal to the developers and the institutes and as well as businesses. So we are going to work with PMR and PMC, PCMC to rope in the other stakeholders. Going to the next project.
Yeah, renewable energy microgrids. See, the future of energy is decentralized energy generation and decentralized energy consumption. And this will be done through smart microgrids. And the energy scenario is going to be a network of smart microgrids. And it has to start at home. And microgrids, when I say microgrids, can be a small company, a small village, or it could be a small area, or in Pune, a pet, or whichever size you want to take, it will be a microgrid of that size. And this microgrid will have different energy generating possibilities, like solar. There could be biogas. In Pune there are ward level biogas plants. So if those plants are strengthened, these can become small parts of the microgrid. There could be battery storages which are there in it. But the whole idea in a microgrid is to have availability of energy 100% and reduce emissions to the maximum possible extent and optimize the cost of energy while doing that. So microgrids are what are going to do that. So availability will be 24/7, and then you can look at different things like hospitals, MSMEs, cold storages, clusters. These can be our pilot projects based on which we can actually implement the smart microgrid possibilities. And of course, in that we will have a number of stakeholders, including Mahagenco, SECI, MSEDCL, and number of host of them, including some private organizations and companies. Large companies have their own consumption which are very, very large. So they, along with the area around them, can become a small microgrid. That is the whole idea. But the focus here is availability of energy, use of renewable energy, reduction in emissions, and then optimizing the cost. That's the whole idea.
Going to the next, we are talking about RE power charging stations. Now we know that electric vehicles are becoming very popular and they're really rapidly rising. If we keep charging electric vehicles with coal-generated electricity, then we are doing something wrong, right? We are just pushing scope 2 to scope 1 to scope 2. So we really want to look at how do we generate the electricity that we consume within Pune city for the electric vehicles. For that, we will have to look at EV charging stations which are renewable energy powered. And there are a lot of potential pilot projects which we have in mind. For example, EV charging. We looked at the scenario and we saw that nearly 70% of electric vehicle charging happens either in the homes or at places of work. So we still need about 30% of the capacity to be distributed within PMR, and for that we need the renewable energy charging. So collaborating with EV startups and commercial fleet operation and basically putting business models which make it profitable for the operator to use these kind of scenarios. And of course the stakeholders for this are PMR, PCMC, PMRDA, but most importantly RE suppliers and RE users and charging host stations. So we're going to look at petrol pumps, diesel stations, gas stations, PMPML facilities, parking facilities, depots, all of these areas where there is a significant capacity to generate solar energy and use it for charging. The next one would be reduction of infrastructure emissions by 30%. Yeah.
So basically, if you look at infrastructure, then there are a number of stakeholders on which we would not have control. But it is very important to identify and demonstrate at least a few projects where you have net zero buildings. That means the embodied emissions, those are there in the building while you are making the building, and while operating the building, the emissions, those are going to come. You can actually try and make those emissions to zero, and you can take up pilot projects based on that. And that is the idea. So essentially we could take up some commercial buildings, we could take up some private buildings, influence or somehow sensitize the people to put in the efforts to make zero emission buildings, and those will be the pilot projects that we are looking at. And once it is proven, then it is easier for people to take it up. But at the same time, it is very, very important to have policies which will drive this. The green building codes have to be mandated, which are not there today. So if you start mandating that, if you can create a positive force that is going to drive it, then these kinds of projects will be possible. We will start with some pilots, but it is very important to have the strength given to these pilots by policies.
And we think the PMR has a significant role to play in this because they are one of the biggest stakeholders for the infrastructure development, and almost 70% of PMR areas still yet to be developed, and therefore that's the place where we really need to attack in this point. The fifth program was reducing carbon dioxide equivalent emissions by 30% through waste management. And as we have seen, unfortunately, there's been a dearth of data from the urban local bodies about what could be the emissions and what kind of processing takes place within solid waste and liquid waste. So there has to be a scenario analysis which we did here, but we definitely saw a huge potential for pilot projects within this area where there is a significant scope of reduction of emissions here. So decentralized plants at ward level, biogas electricity plants, biogas fertilizer plants, which Nitan would speak of, in situ composting. So there is a lot of decentralization opportunity here in the entire Pune city. While PMC has been doing this for a very long time, they are trying to decentralize the approach, but it really needs to be broken down and fragmented further.
Yeah. So one is the municipal solid waste that you have, and that's where PMC comes in picture. But at the same time, in PMR, there is a lot of agricultural waste, and in Pune district, if you will, there is a lot of agricultural waste which has the potential to produce biogas and compost. See, basically all the biogas plants, they become very interesting because they allow you to generate energy while you are producing organic fertilizer. So I call these plants as biogas fertilizer plants and not as biogas energy plants. Because if you look at the payback coming from these plants, about 30 to 35% of the payback is going to come from energy, whereas about 65% payback or return on investment for these plants is going to come from organic fertilizers. So these are very, very important because on the one hand, we are trying to tell the nation to reduce chemical fertilizers and go to organic fertilizers, but on the other hand, we also have to give them the possibility of producing that organic fertilizer. So the agricultural residue will give you the opportunity to extract energy while you are producing organic fertilizers, and this possibility is definitely there in PMR and in conjunction with PMR, the entire Pune district. Because I believe the development of PMR and Pune district have to go hand in hand, and then only that synergetic relationship is going to really develop what we want.
Right, and it's not very axiomatic, but cities in India can be the largest producers of biofertilizers for India. So that's something which PMR can demonstrate here. There are two other programs that we wish to look at. Okay, so there are two other programs which we're going to look at. One is to promote innovation-driven R&D program for the direct removal of CO2 gases. We know that this technology is very much in the nascent stage. The energy return on energy invested is a little doubtful in the entire process, EROEI as it is called in renewable energy cycle. But there is a significant potential in this program. And as you saw in the first graph which was shown by Siddharth, that there is very little possibility of increasing the natural sequestration capacity by 2030, and that's going to be linear, that's going to be as per the geologic time scale, not as per the human time scale. So we really need to look at technologies which can sequester carbon and put it into a use which is not going to re-emit the emission which is trapped. So these are the carbon capture, utilization and storage technologies, direct removal. So we would like to engage with the youth and the startups and the entrepreneurs within the PMR region to engage them within workshops, innovations, hackathons, organizing financing for these kind of activities, and then trying to figure out what are the best ways to capture these emissions, capture carbon, reuse carbon, store carbon, sequester carbon, all of these kind of things. This is going to be refined further in the coming days because this was a very sketchy first brainstorm that came up. But essentially, we definitely would like to focus a lot on promoting innovation in the R&D sphere of direct removal of CO2. The last one is perhaps the most important, and I would have liked Mr. Vikram Kumar to be here. This is about the carbon neutrality cell. What PMR requires desperately is a cell which monitors, audits, reviews, stores data, captures data, and enforces whatever we have been discussing here. The nationally determined commitments are not going to be reached until every urban local body and every Panchayati Raj institution in the country puts in their own efforts towards that. One of the most important ways to put in the efforts for the urban local body within PMR is to have a carbon neutrality cell. While we are discussing the nitty-gritties of the carbon neutrality cell, there are definitely some things which we have thought about. One is the scope of what this cell is going to do and what are the mandate that they would take. So you have a copy of this. Again, I'm not going to read out each one of them, but this is useful. We would like to also have your views on what could be the role of the carbon neutrality cell and how could it function, what could be the committee members, so on and so forth. So that's something which is very important for us. Yeah.
I'd like to add, this has been discussed with the Deputy Commissioner, who could not be here today, but I'm very glad Poonam ji is here. And we are taking it forward under the control of the Deputy Commissioner today. That will be a major step forward.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's about it. And Siddharth, I'll request you now to take it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gurudas and Dr. Nitan Mate. Before we move to the open discussion, I'd like to invite Shri S Chockalingam, the chairperson for today's event, to please give his chairperson's address.
Very good evening to all of you, and thanks to Pune International Center for having it in YASHADA. We have a long association with PAC. I will not take much time. I can only say that just now Vikram Kumar left saying that G20 meeting is going to happen in our country in 2023, so there is a VC, so he has to leave. So India is becoming a happening place, and within which Pune should be the most happening place. So instead of thinking and creating only intellectual things, the greatest advantage of Pune is the capacity to do the things. So Ajay Ranade sahib is here. He is heading an organization which evolved in the implementation of an economic analysis of the British rule by the great person Gokhale, and he doesn't stop there, and now it is serving the country continuously with how to implement theory into practice. So Pune city has not only the willingness intellectually and otherwise, but the capacity to implement. Capacity in the sense that we have local bodies which are capable of implementing. If you analyze the local bodies in the entire state, there are only few local bodies which can be counted in the fingers who are capable of implementing what they decide. Mumbai, Navi Mumbai, Pune, Pimpri Chinchwad. These are the 4 corporations which can plan, and apart from development authorities, I am not getting to DAs. PMR DAs will be anyway capable of implementing because of the different model. But other local bodies have their own problem of making both ends meet. These local bodies have the capacity, the financial muscle to implement. So let us take it forward. It is no longer in some third world it is happening. I mean, we were part of the third world. I am intentionally using the third world. It is happening now and here and at every place. In the past fortnight, we heard about the Europe going dry, the major rivers of Europe going dry, and the biggest river in China, Yangtze, going dry. And yesterday, you are reading about Pakistan inundated, 1,000 people killed. So it is no longer there, not related to me, and is now one here. Thankfully, there is intellectual capacity within Pune, which if we put together, we can make things happen. As Professor Amitav told, we can set an example. We need leaders, and let Pune be the leader with all of you in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr S Chockalingam.
I'll just butt in here a little bit. Welcome some late arrivals like the PCMC, Mr. Shekhar. And we have very senior people here. Lina Kolkar is there from TCS, Director Council is there, and there are many seniors. So I would like very much to invite them to express their views, have their comments, because that's what we will gain, the PIC team and the Pune can gain from how best to go forward. So I would like to request that we kick off this discussion by comments from the seniors. May I? Lina sir? Dr. Ranade sir?
Thank you. Can I just speak from here? So thank you for inviting me, and thanks to Dr. Amitav, Mallik, and thanks for Mr. Chockalingam. Very warm welcome from you. It's always a pleasure. And I don't know if Dr. Amitav knows and people here that we have a close relationship with our institution. So it's always nice to be here. And thank you for the presentation, Gurudas and Mr. Mallik. I think, right up front, I'd like to say that if there's any role that Gokhale Institute can play, we'll be very happy to contribute in whatever little way we can in the implementation. My understanding from the presentation is that much thought has gone into actioning areas, and you told me something like maybe 25 odd areas are there with specific targets. So if there is any possibly role in terms of monitoring or supervising or evaluating, those are the areas, those are the kind of skills or expertise that our people can bring in. And the other area, so I'm just focusing straight away on actioning. I don't think people here need to be convinced or persuaded about the need to do this, and certainly I know the kind of passion that Professor Mallik has brought it for many, many years. So we will, I'll just mention what we could do. So apart from this monitoring, evaluation and so on, supervision, there is also a role for actually policy advocacy. And I'm talking about the local level. We don't have to target government or government of Maharashtra or central government, even at the local level. And policy advocacy not necessarily focused on policymakers or lawmakers, but actually people of Pune. So, and not only obviously in any one language, it should be multilingual, certainly in Marathi. So in that area also, I think if you want to, if you want us to contribute, we can definitely do that. We do have a center for sustainable development. We actually have a smaller center called DR Gardel Center for Sustainable Village Development, where a particular village near Pune has been adopted and so on. But we do a lot of work in this. So so in short, supervision, monitoring, evaluation studies, many studies, many and many studies, and policy advocacy work in writing material which is not only aimed at policymakers but the people of Pune, especially in languages and non-technical lingo. So on both these I think we'll be happy to talk to you.
I think one of the area you can contribute is creating incentives and disincentives. You are the master of that. Maybe how to create incentive and economic incentives and disincentives. You should contribute.
No, certainly. Actually, since I'm tempted to reply to him, is it okay? What happens is when you give, I'm now in academia, so when you grab a mic, you tend to not let go of it. So, but let me respond, yeah. So, I think what Mr. Chockalingam is referring to is the set of sort of maybe instruments like taxation or monetary incentives or nudges, nowadays is nudge approach. So certainly we can explore that in terms of approach to this, or else actually specific instruments, whatever is available at the local level. What I'm saying is again and again is that basically let's focus on Pune as a region and only do it in maybe localities, and especially on this EV areas. I think we have a lot of interest in transportation. So I'd be happy to connect with the relevant group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ranade. So when you give your comments, if I may request, you can refer to this slide. So we have identified a process-wise pointers. So you can see from left, from conducting local surveys that identify the targets, all the way to implementing the project and monitoring it. So you can refer to the slide when you give your comments on how your organization can contribute to this next phase. So
first of all, as I said, we are taking an initiative for carbon neutrality itself, and I wonder whether Ms Poonam Mehta might want to comment on it. Yeah. Right.
Actually, at the Divisional Commissioner Office, Pune, under the guidance of Divisional Commissioner Sir, we have been interacting with PIC on this particular carbon neutral PMR topic, and we have also discussed many times. We have had meetings, and we have also established a cell on carbon neutral PMR. Actually, we also, last 2 years, we have been also implementing the Maaji Vasundhara Abhiyan of Government of Maharashtra, which includes many of the aspects that have been talked about today. So some more aspects may be included in that, and I think if that kind of a project, that was one, it was a kind of framework for competition amongst cities, amongst villages, to get implemented various aspects of environment-related work. So definitely, I myself feel one is the cell. How does only having a cell at Divisional Commissioner Office may not work. We may have to have such kind of cells, multiple cells at various major cities in PMR. I'm not saying only PMC, PCMC, but there are, I think we need to find out, because there are many councils around which there is lot of rural areas with urban growth. So which are such areas which are generating more carbon emissions? That also needs to be found out, and how we can focus more on those areas. So that is one aspect. Another aspect, one or two areas that I thought, some doubts or question marks that I had. You mentioned about the DPRs. So have you identified the projects actually?
So these 7 projects are not final projects. So these are to get the discussion started. And when we connect again after the roundtable, then we'll be meeting with each sector experts to finalize these projects.
Generally, this is the idea. In this 7 areas, we want to go forward.
And I feel if Government of Maharashtra can come up with such a policy, then it is better for, I think YASHADA also may take a lead in helping the government to do this, because there would be multiple departments involved in the implementation of this. Definitely this is a very path-breaking work, and I think in India this must be the first. In European countries, I don't know, or in the Western world, there are a lot of things happening regarding NCN. But in India, this must be the first such effort. And if we really want to go ahead with this, we need state government along with us, and which can make different departments work. So we also need to identify which activities are related to which department in this, and then what that department needs to do. And then the machinery, implementation machinery, how to revitalize it. So that's what I think.
Would the government officials Would you like to say something, whatever, your reaction to this deliberation?
Sorry for the delay today. And, I'm a bit of a new entrant to PCMC, if I can say so. It's been only 1 week that I joined, so I wouldn't second double guess the entire scenario. But looking at the entire thing and what I was going through quickly through the presentation, I think it's little bit, it's intuitive but little bit sobering to know that 45% of our emissions are going just through electricity. So, I mean, generally the microgrid, etc., that you've referred to is also again something that we are still not thinking about in the urban areas. I have not come across any example through whatever I've been reading that way. And I think PMPML is doing their own job with regards to reducing the emission in terms of transport sector, which again you say is about 25% of the total thing. And I think green building code is something that we can definitely look from my angle in terms of PCMC. Obviously, it needs to be a bit of a policy decision from the government side also. But then again, it will have to be affordable housing versus green building. Those balance we might have to maintain. But in few things, definitely in housing areas which are above a certain limit or above a certain financial this thing, definitely I think it is probably time that we can start implementing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's a really great point.
Mr. Kemna, you came
Mr.
late,
Kemna
but
is here, yes.
you've been in the game. Would you like to say something?
Would you like some time for us to go through the PPTs there on the desk?
Actually, she has, good evening all, good evening sir. Ms Vaishali has shared the PPT, and like you said, we have met couple of times. PMC, PMPML, we are taking many joint initiatives in terms of carbon neutrality and net zero initiatives. Largely, definitely it's in terms of transport sector. We are largely financing all the e-buses as well as their charging infrastructure, depot development and other activities, as well as other financing their operational deficit for similar targets. And as PMC, we are also procuring e-vehicles for our own use. We already have, sir, around 30 electric vehicles in our fleet, and we have also finalized the tender for a few more electric vehicles. We already have installed EV charging station in our own premises for two-wheeler as well as four-wheeler. There is, sir, one more project which is already now, which has reached up to final stage for general body approval, in which we have proposed around 500 charging stations across the city, in which there will be charging, parking, docking facility available for two-wheelers, electric two-wheelers. So everything will be done by project proponent, and PMC just have to provide land and permission for use. Sir, other than that, in energy electrical department, we have done, sir, 2 MOUs with Mahaprik, that is state government PSU, in which we have done energy audit and energy saving MOU, through which they will be saving at least more than 50% of our current energy consumption, and based on PPP model, on ESCO model, which will be generating the saving, and through savings only we will be giving their cost, paying back their cost to them.
So we are going to come up with a quest for carbon audit and carbon budgeting.
Yes, yes. We already have, Mahaprit has already started. In fact, a launch was proposed. Bipin Shimai sir is CMD of Mahaprit, and the launch was proposed this week also only, but it is not finalized yet. Then another thing, we have again done MOU with Mahaprit for power generation, mainly through solar, for 50 megawatt, and through that also that also we will pay them through energy saving. That will bring down cost of energy power purchase for PMC. Other than that, sir, we are taking other major initiatives in solid waste management, through which we are trying to bring down emission as well as reclaim the land which is currently there wasted through dumping of the legacy waste. So that and converting that into green covers to increase carbon sink and increase carbon sequestration. So
So I am just telling many initiatives in bits and pieces.
Thank you very much. I think.
And sir, just to sum up, we have EECC, as I think most of the audience in the room knows that Pune is first EV ready city in the country. We were the first city to form EECC. It was acknowledged in Maju Vasundhara also in state function. As well as we have set up climate cell. Then we have already also set up climate cell to achieve for climate action. We have also set up groundwater management cell. So I think many of the dignitaries in this room are member of both these committees. So we are taking integrated action in all these areas because ultimately all these activities contribute to carbon neutrality.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, Dr. Kumar left, but we must put on record that Pune is one of the cities that's doing a lot of work, and that encourages us in PIC to still further push the envelope and become one of the first major metropolitan area to show the rest of the other cities in India and abroad that we can indeed go to carbon neutrality much faster. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Dinanath Kolkar, sir, to please share your comments.
Hi, my name is Dinanath Kolkar. I'm part of TCS and I'm also the member of PIC, and I'm also participating in various initiatives in the city, be it PPCR or stuff that we are doing at PKC, IEEE and some of the Tata Group initiatives. One thing I just wanted to share is that there is a lot of pockets of excellence across the city, but we don't seem to be collaborating as well as we should be doing. So I think that is one thing we should definitely look at, providing some mechanism to sharing some of the best practices. Just yesterday we organized one very interesting workshop, roundtable by PKC, where we had the Norwegian folks along with some of the members of PKC participate in one of the discussions around waste management. And in that we had an amazing learning experience. I personally did not know about the type of expertise, startups that have focused on waste management, and potentially they are looking for some opportunities to scale up. Okay? And that's a great opportunity for us to look at creating that entire ecosystem of different capabilities that are there in the city itself, which can be leveraged. So that's one thing which I would like to share, that wherever we have seen big successes and on complex issues like this, it is on collaboration. And I think it's very important to look at it. And the SDG 17 goal is all about collaboration. So I think I just want to put it up right up front. The second issue I just wanted to highlight is about awareness. About a year back, TCS ran a very interesting ideathon called TCS Sustainathon. Professor Mallik was an advisor to us as well. And while many of us might think that we are aware of what is the climate risk and what are the type of things, I can bet you that if you take a quiz on climate risk right now, all of us might fail. Okay? So I think one of the key goals we should do is to put a very high focus on awareness, and awareness in multiple languages, keeping different target segments. Okay, there is, when we started digital, I'm just giving you a perspective. When we started digital literacy, and I worked very closely with Ganesh Natarajan and Ruchi, we were asking ourselves, everybody knows how to use a mobile phone and things like that. When we did a survey, we were shocked. In a city like Pune, digital literacy was in single digits. So climate literacy, probably we should be happy if we get to 2% or 3% or even lower. So I think a very big focus on the city has to be on awareness. And I was studying some of the things that some of the more progressive nations, especially Japan, so we should definitely look at some partnerships on awareness campaigns, what can potentially be done. So that's the second point I just wanted to table. The third one, we were very successful in actually creating a digital twin for the city of Pune during the pandemic. And all of the PMC members will be aware of it. We have a research center which is focusing on digital twins, and yesterday in fact Vinay Kulkarni, our scientist, was there, and he's offered to make that available as a technology for use. Okay, and we can train people, students, specific experts on digital twins. And we've offered to do that in context of waste management, but I think this is enough a complex problem to take a look at it. And since it has worked in Pune, we have good amount of trust in that model. We can potentially look at using that. So I think that these are the 3 points sir, I would like to share with you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting points. Friends, Dr. Ravi Pandit is here with us. He is one of the founding trustees and also a technology innovator. Wonderful work he has done in fuel cells. May I request you, Pandit, may I request you for your
Yes, so I think there is a great deal of need to work across multiple entities and segments in the society. And I would like to bring out some of the things in which the Chamber, the Janwani and KPIT have been involved. And I think this is something which can be very rapidly scaled up. At Janwani we worked on waste management. Waste accounts for 6% of the emissions these days. And a large part of the waste is actually coming out of slums. And Janwani did a program targeted at slums to ensure that the waste at slums get properly collected, properly segregated and properly processed. And we were able to show that we can get almost 90% collection, almost 80% segregation, etc. Now, and at a very limited cost. I think this is something that we need to roll across the city. If we address the slums in the city, and as you probably know, almost like 10% of the area and 40% of the population stays in slums. So if we can address that, a large part of waste management can be addressed. Now, we have also been working on technologies which will convert waste into green energy. And as you probably know, working with some labs, we have come up with technologies which will convert waste into hydrogen. And hydrogen can be an extremely clean fuel. And this is something which can actually significantly reduce the cost of management of waste. It can also reduce the cost of running transport in the city, because on the basis of this hydrogen, hydrogen fuel cell buses can run in the city. We also, and it was in the papers recently, we also demonstrated and launched a fuel cell bus, a bus running on hydrogen fuel cells. So there is work to be done in this area. We believe that a large part of and the transport accounts for almost like 24-25% of the emissions, and a lot of that emission is actually cars, but equally three-wheelers as well as buses. And we have been kind of very much deeply engaged in addressing these battery electric vehicles. And we all know that if we were to look at business as usual when it comes to electric mobility, we will switch from diesel to lithium-ion batteries, which is as bad as diesel because we are going to rely on a few countries. And therefore our company, KPIT, has been working on an alternate battery technology called sodium-ion batteries. And we started working at it 6 years ago when nobody talked about it. And now everybody is talking about it. As you probably know, Reliance recently purchased a sodium-ion battery company for £100 million in the UK. And world's largest battery making company called CATL, Chinese company, they have announced that next year they will be introducing sodium-ion batteries. So if we look at sodium-ion batteries in the context of our public transportation, both in rickshaws as well as in public transport buses, I think the cost of operation would be lower than diesel and petrol without considering any other incentives. So I think that is something that we need to look at. So whether it is transport or waste management, I believe that good solutions are very easily affordable and possible. And this is something as a city, if we can work on in a focused way, we should be able to crack the problem. On the third part, which is the electricity, which is a very large part of the emissions that we are talking about, Professor Mallik, you have been talking about it. A lot of work needs to be done on solar panels, and in our own company, more than 50% of the electric bills are now addressed through solar panels. I think we can do it at individual residence levels as well as at company levels. And I believe that if we really work on it in a very focused manner, we should be able to crack this problem in less than a decade from now. And I truly appreciate the work that you have really done under the aegis of PIC for this purpose. It's an initiative worth pursuing with full vigor. And my compliments to you for this.
Thank you very much. The next really big chunk of emission is the infrastructure. And we have been talking to Madam. So may I request that you make a lecture comment on whatever we are trying to do. Guru Keskar.
Yeah, this is Dr. Pune Keskar, who is a part in, a group of Climate Collective Pune and a director at WIKI. So, just to share my, work that we have done with PIC, we realized that there are many incentives which are right now given for green buildings. As you all know that Indian International Panel for Climate Change actually came out with an observation that if you wanted to reduce the carbon emissions at least cost, the low-hanging fruit is the infrastructure sector. The other sectors would need more investments to reduce the carbon intensity, while as infrastructure and buildings are the most important and focused area which one should be looking at immediately. So with that, the building industry, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, there are different green building rating systems which are being administered by private sector. However, at the state level, there is no green building policy. There was a kind of an effort which was done around 7-8 years back by right now Director Avinash Patil, and I think we need to revive that. And actually, as someone said, even PCMC leader said that we need to mandate it. So without mandating this kind of a thing, we are not going to achieve if we are going to keep it voluntary. That's one. Second is also there is there was an idea of spreading awareness. We all know that people who live inside green buildings also need to take care of the green infrastructure in the operational phase of the buildings. So awareness is one of the key factors that one should be looking at if we want to achieve the entire benefits and potential of carbon emission reduction in the infrastructure sector, because we know that 80% of the carbon emissions are in the operational phase of any infrastructure. So awareness is the key, and we need to focus on that, is what I feel.
Thank you very much, Pooja ma'am. I'd now like to bring on board Mr. Talwar from MSEDCL. As biggest chunk of the emissions are coming from the electricity sector, may I please request you to give it, please.
As a Chief Engineer, MSEDCL Pune. Firstly, I would like to say we are already contributing by accelerating the bulk electric power connection for EV charging station. We have already cross-subsidized the rate for that, so which is in large, mostly PMLs use bulk stations, and it will definitely decrease the carbon emission on the part of the transportation sector. Secondly, we are already installing around 10 electrical charging stations by our own in Pune. Out of that, some of have already started commercial operation, and the rates are very meager because it has been installed in our own infrastructure, so the service charges will be very less. It is coming around, total cost is around 10 to 11 rupees, because when we start electric charging station, the space constraint and the service charges are very high, so the people or entrepreneurs are not coming. Other than the companies like corporation and metros, no one is coming in the sector to install the EV charging station because of the constraint of the place and the service charges. So it is not economical. As the number of consumers will increase, it becomes economical. So that is one of the reasons. So we are largely contributing in this sector by cross-subsidizing. Secondly, what is our opinion in this sector? That the pace of development is very high comparative to other part of India in Pune. So we have to beat that carbon emission with a larger rate than the development. Then only we can achieve the goal. Because as an electricity utility, we know actual development, because every industry is one of the major raw materials, electricity. So in the category wise, residential, commercial, industrial, what is the growth, actual growth, physical growth, not the visible infrastructure, because the electricity consumption can give the exact consumption pattern and development growth of that sector. So like I can say, in last financial year, we have released around 2 lakh electricity connection in the city, Pune. Out of that, residential was around 1.5 lakh and others were industrial and commercial. So the rate of increase of the consumption was around 13% earlier year. So if this growth, we have to beat this growth to reduce the carbon, not reduce the growth, reduce the carbon emission more than this percent of the growth. Then only we can achieve the result. That is my opinion, and we are ready to contribute for this on my MSEDCL part. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Like you rightly said, the consumption is just going to keep on increasing each year. And in the report, we have also analyzed this, and we expect that it's going to increase by almost 2.5 times by the end of this decade. So yeah, there needs to be a lot of impetus on pumping renewable energy into the grid. So what we'll do now is, so everybody should get a chance to speak and contribute in the discussion. So why don't we start with you, Lakshmi Narayan sir? We can take it one by one in line. And I really request you all to give your inputs on how your organization can contribute further to the action plan. Of course, we love traveling in the electric buses that have come in Pune now. It comes really handy in the summer and the monsoon. But of course, like mentioned in the report, can we think of ideas on how we can power it with renewable energy?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So, PMPML is doing their own small bit towards climate change. So, we have a fleet of around 300 electric vehicles, and very new, on September 2nd, we are adding 90 more buses, electric buses, to our fleet. And these are fully electric buses. We have 4 depots in PMC area, which is catering to the charging. But as Mr. Mehta had rightly said, we are using scope 1 thing to scope 3. Like we are using fossil fuel generated power to charge electric vehicles. So India has I think nearly rough 75% of electricity generated through fossil fuel, and only 25%. So I think there has to be a shift. So we are doing a bit of getting solar powered depots. We are already floating a tender. We have finalized on the order also. So that also will cater to hardly 20% of the charging energy consumed. So that is also still a small bit. I happened to visit Norway, Oslo, very recently, and I could see 82% vehicles electric, and moreover 84 to 85% of their electric generation is through hydroelectricity. But developing countries, India, China, US, Russia, they still depend upon fossil fuel. So I think it will take some time for us to be that carbon friendly, carbon neutral. But we have run around 2 crores kilometers till now. Since last 3 years, we have saved around 16,000 tons of carbon dioxide, which used to be released through diesel buses, CNG buses. Delhi government had a history. The Supreme Court intervened, and suddenly the diesel buses were banned in Delhi 5 years back, and then they slowly shifted to CNG buses and electric buses. So we at PMPML are so motto planning to rule out all the diesel buses. So we have done away with our long diesel buses. There are some few diesel buses which are remaining in our fleet. The smaller ones, they will be also phased out in a year or so. So we recently started a bio-CNG fueled bus, entirely a PMC initiative. The waste was converted to bio-CNG, and the first bus, I think after Surat in Maharashtra, the first bus to run on bio-CNG. So we are doing our small bit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Hello, my name is Gopal. I retired as a director in Lasan Football, and I'm now based in Pune. Unfortunately, I'm not fully aware of the kind of initiatives which have already been taken by so many organizations. I'm learning a lot today. So pardon me if I say something which has already been done by somebody or the other. One, we are talking about certain things I worry about, like trees has become a hot topic. Because it has become a hot topic in some countries, it has become a hot topic with us. And we tend to sort of talk about numbers of EVs that have been introduced. Unfortunately, if EVs are not backed up by, as Mr. Ravi Pandit rightly put it, the kind of source for electric batteries, and second, whether we are having that RE capability to support those, we are doing the wrong thing. And therefore, when I hear that so many, whether it's electric vehicles or buses have been introduced, okay, what happens to the old buses? I mean, are we passing on the problem somewhere else? Or are we sort of converting them into something else? The idea of using waste to convert it to biodiesel is a great idea, because you are talking about waste and then converting to diesel. But to replace a bus which is running with an EV, unless it is supported by a corresponding RE, it is just actually undoing a lot of things. That's my concern. So for example, if an incentive is given, I'm not talking, maybe it might sound a little exaggerated to some. Supposing it is a policy that any company or unit which sets up a RE supported charging system is given heavy incentives, even to the extreme that it can be totally free, supported by the incentives, you are doing something which is in line with what we want to really achieve. Otherwise, we are looking at the wrong kind of measures. Now, talking about biodiesel, there is, in fact, I did come to know, I visited the plant, there's a company, a small company in Chakan, which is producing the second generation biodiesel. They call it Abhilasha. Some of you might have already heard it. It is not generating diesel from any food source. Like some things which you hear now, there's a whole talk about ethanol and all that worldwide, and we all know that ethanol is a great thing and it has got some hidden problem which emerge a little later. So we shouldn't get carried away by these waves which I talked about. Brazil went into ethanol and one of the companies in Pune has taken a lead there. But having said that, is that the right direction to go, rather than considering the huge waste that is generated by agro industries and converting that into biodiesel, the second generation diesel? So that's another thing that. And the other part which was already mentioned, I would like to re-stress, the sharing of best practices, whether international or national, in cities, across, I think is so vital. There can be a portal which will just capture all the best practices in various cities, and then we make use of that rather than reinventing the wheel. In most of these cases, solutions have been found. So we need not waste our energy in reinventing it, rather than that we adapt those technologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gurudas.
Good evening. This is Reenaz Pathan. Currently, I am holding the charge of Chief Engineer, PMRD. Sir, PMRD is having around 6900 square kilometer area. A huge opportunity for PMRD to work on infrastructure, and PMRD has currently published draft DP and suggestion objections are coming, and we have kept reservation for EV charging also in DP. So one step, and also PMRD had signed MOU with 2000 smart 2000 watt smart city. That is for the carbon neutrality only. So PMRD has to set up one cell. So I will take forward from this meeting to have such cell and initiative towards waste management, because I am currently doing a project of housing for affordable housing, where I have to see waste management also. So I will see whether this waste management can be done through right. Beside me, Madam was talking regarding her contribution. So, with this conference, I will take forward to my Commissioner Sir regarding the initiative and formation of cell at least. And I will see whatever buildings and whatever infrastructure is being done through PMRD will have green initiative. And one major project I am doing is Shivajinagar Hinjewadi metro, that model shift from private to public, that will happen in 2025. Then 4 lakhs commuters will transfer in metro. So that is greenhouse gases emission will be reduced through metro. So another such big projects initiatives will be taken by PMRD. One another DPR is in progress, Loni Harbor, Shivajinagar to Loni Harbor. So PMRD is taking the process forward. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Rashmi, ma'am, if I just make a small announcement before. So, of course, we'd really like to have, in the interest of time, specific feedback on some of these pilots and also the processes that we have mentioned for implementation with respect to how your organization can contribute in these aspects. If you have any specific feedback on the feasibility study, the report and the summary, or some of the initiatives that you'd like to share across, we have Ria here on this side and Preeti at the end. They'll give you the contact details. Please feel free to reach out to us. But for this discussion, let's maybe discuss some points behind this.
Yeah, thanks. I will come to focusing on how Pune Knowledge Cluster can help in taking these initiatives forward. With respect to sustainable mobility, as in our contribution in the report also, it was highlighted that our focus should be sustainability and circularity, and it was pointed out earlier also. Unless we have a focused attention to the existing fleet of vehicles and also an action plan in place for what do we do to these electric vehicles as they retire in future. So we will not be achieving our goal. So that's where PKC would like to contribute. We can also involve the vehicle industry to a large extent so that they are on board. Anything which is at that scale needs everybody's concerted efforts together. So unless we involve all those stakeholders, it will not be possible. Through PKC, we can drive that. Regarding the carbon neutrality sale at PMRDA, PMC, and other things, what we can offer to do is we have done it in fact earlier as a concept stage to develop dynamic dashboard for tracking the sustainability goals for the cities. We can also scale this up through our cluster approach because under the Principal Scientific Advisors direction, there are clusters in other cities. So the learning from one city can directly be applied across the other clusters. That's where PKC can contribute. I would have liked Dr. Ajit Ranade to be here and I would like to discuss how we can incentivize or disincentivize the fleet modernization, the old vehicles to be taken out and how we can incentivize it, but that's later to be discussed. On your suggestion, ma'am, regarding reaching out and making awareness, is one of the business verticals of PKC, and we are very good at citizen engagement, and that's where probably we can contribute very greatly. I think capacity building and skill development is also one area where we can contribute. Thank you.
Hello everybody, this is Architect Kanchan Sidhe from VK Environmental. My work has been mostly in the building construction sector. Just a few things to park in relation with the path that we're looking forward. We're looking at energy efficiency, we're looking at reduction in operational consumptions, but we need to have a common language. Energy efficiency could mean something a little different to me than somebody else here. So the ECBC codes or the green building systems often refer to this terminology called Energy Performance Index. And it is high time that probably the EPI is a common benchmark to compare buildings. And it is something probably that can come up into a MSEDCL bill that okay, this is the EPI of my property. Or it could come into a property tax bill wherein okay, this is my square meters of my building and this is what my EPI is. So I think there needs to be a common language of EPI. Based on our work in the past, we've gathered that in non-residential projects, if we meet an EPI of 40 to 50 kilowatt hour per square meter per year, it is possible to make a carbon neutral energy, or from the consumption side, carbon neutral or energy neutral building with a rooftop solar PV. If that EPI is still 100, no matter if I cover my entire roof, I will not be able to land. So there are these learnings which the green buildings have passed on to us, but they need to have a common language of energy efficiency which we all can speak and which the layman can also understand. In terms of awareness, when this discussion was happening, a very simple thing came to my mind, that while we give out our occupancy certificates or completion certificates, like in a green building we often give a green homes guideline to who? To the end user, because a developer has only little scope. His scope is common areas, maybe the STP energy and pumps and motors, but the consumer has way more. He's linked up to, say, the BE star rating program for appliances. So he's going to buy a fridge, he's going to buy an air conditioner. So can there be like a do's and don'ts kind of a checklist? It's there on the BE website, but if we can issue it with our OCs, if we can issue it with where people fill in their property tax, probably the outreach could be even better. That what are the appliances they should buy and what cash they should take. And two more very quick points is water saving could also mean a reduction in the emissions overall, which is again a very low hanging fruit. So if we use water saving low flow fittings and low flush fittings across the PMR, there will be an immediate delta, and it's a very inexpensive kind of measure to do. And link up between the solar PV installation on rooftop and the allowance for that. So whether the policies that are existing today, whether they allow me to connect with the grid through net metering, cross metering. So because a few of the projects which probably try to do that, there are certain limitations currently, so we have gathered from the current case studies and projects. So I think these are the points related to the pathway. And so I think BKE can, because being in the building sector, I think can closely work on the technical aspects and feasibilities and DPRs of how a green building or a net zero buildings can happen, on a larger scale, maybe at a cluster level.
Also, as you know, stakeholder involvement is very important aspect where we can connect to the stakeholders and convince them for getting a project like a pilot project. That is what we can do. Also, we being a part of sustainability initiatives, we have already done stakeholder consultations for the EV cell which is there, and such kind of consultations can happen through the sustainability initiatives trust which Valley is representing.
Yeah, if I may please request to keep your comments short in the interest of time as we move on.
Yeah, we represent Maharashtra EECC. From our side, Mr. Ravi will speak.
Hello, I am Anand Aduk, GM from MEDA office. As far as this energy consumption is concerned, the first point, which is increasing efficiency, we do have energy auditors appointed from MEDA offices, and presently we are doing the energy audit of various industries. So the thing that thing we can explore for all the government buildings, government offices, and also all the private offices, and we can check out their process and how we can save the energy from the water process they are now adopted, and how it can be saved, as well as how efficiently we can use the star-rated equipments and all that. We have recently conducted one seminar here also in Pune, in which we have conducted a seminar which all the industries were gathered, and we also gave them soft loan. We tie up them with the various banks to get the soft loan for getting the equipments changed. The second thing which we are talking about, the extension of microgrids, we are already taken up the projects of waste to green hydrogen generation, as well as waste to biomass and municipal solid waste. And those projects we are already taken up, and that is of course a R&D project we want to explore for the entire city. And green hydrogen, as a friend from KPIT told, that project we are doing, and that green hydrogen generation can be used for the buses, which we intend to do in the future course of time. We are already tied up with the various technology institutions like IIT Mumbai and Lakshminarayan Institute of Technology Nagpur for implementing various innovative and the projects which we can take up, so that the various organizations can come up for R&D projects. If any organization in Pune PMR area is ready to do some R&D in this particular field, we are ready to collaborate with them. And also, as far as green building institute is concerned, this MEDA's new building at Aund is a EECC compliant building. We have got a team appointed by DE, which is taking for initiative for this EECC. My friend later will explain about that. Thank you very much.
Quickly, may list the points I want to elaborate. First of all, we have submitted one proposal to MEDA regarding the conversion of SFC through the CBG, compressed biogas plants. It is with the MEDA, they have to take call. It's a lab scale, and that is why we can't able to talk about more about that. And if at all it's succeeded, it will be better than the battery storage idea. We also submitted ECBC guidelines to Government of Maharashtra. They are thinking of implementing it. Our GMEC will elaborate about those things. And we are taking various measures to have technology partnership various organizations. If anybody wants to have regarding new technologies, we don't have any technology for the RE charging stations. We don't have any technology here. We are thinking about that also, and anybody has any idea about that, we will definitely support it.
Yeah, we'll definitely be looking to develop these technologies in the next phase.
Hello everyone, my name is Ajit. I work with TCS. I'd like to share a few points. One is on the waste management. My observation is that the segregation of wet waste and dry waste is a very critical area. The wet waste sort of soils the dry waste. Otherwise, the dry waste is a pure wealth, and if the wet waste is sort of disposed at source, and there are two very clear options. One is biogas, and the other is composting. So if it can be done at source, that I think will be extremely effective. So 100% focus on disposing wet waste at source. The other thing I want to draw attention of this forum is to the repurposing of the used cooking oil. So it has two major kind of challenges, kind of impact. One is the tremendous health hazard the used cooking oil creates. And the other one is it is getting disposed in the regular sort of drainage system, which is also causing a lot of problems. So if we can sort of create an ecosystem for collection of those, it is a huge booster for the biogas plant actually. If it is collected properly, it can be used. I was just prior to this roundtable, I was discussing with Dr. Nulkar. And what I came to know is that even the organized sector uses the approach of replenishing the cooking oil rather than replacing it. They keep replenishing it. So, it is very dangerous to the health. The other point I want to sort of bring up is the last mile connectivity. So, for the metro to become effective, we need to sort of create an ecosystem for the last mile connectivity, and where we can revector the auto rickshaws. And the last point is about leveraging the youth for the awareness. So here I would like to sort of mention that IEEE can help because they have a very good network with the engineering colleges, and we have effectively used this mechanism in our initiative called Eureka, where the engineering college students go and teach in the schools, and it is a very powerful mechanism to create awareness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. My sincere apologies to the ladies sitting at the back, but in the interest of time, we have to move on this side of the table because we have to hear from them as well. So may I please request, starting from Vaishali on to Ravi sir, and then perhaps... Should we go? Alright, Dr. Bhagesh Nandagopal, would you like to share comments first?
Sure. Let us speak for 1 minute.
Hello. Good evening everyone. Myself is Suvarna Hundekeri, General Manager Energy Conservation from MEDA. So here we would like to let you know, like being a STA, we are to enforce and regulate and coordinate various provisions of Energy Conservation Act 2001. And under this, we are actually implementing various demonstration projects under the schemes of state government as well as the central government, that is the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. And here we also actually promote various SMEs to conduct their energy audits and to know where they can implement the various energy conservation measures and they can reduce their consumptions. And various awareness programs are being taken from the MEDA on ECBC as well as energy conservation also. And I would like to let you all know, like our next project will be in agriculture demand side management, where we are going to replace all the inefficient pumps of the farmers with the energy efficient pumps. So this can be a good project in future. And of course, in case of the various municipal councils and the corporations, we have actually replaced the various water pumping stations or the water pumps up to say 150 HP. And I'm very glad to let you know that we have almost saved about 156 units per year, and the carbon of 128 tons per year reduction emission. So these are the various initiatives. Of course, I have a very short time, that's why I could elaborate very less on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So we're almost 10 minutes to 6, but we're open to extending the event all the way till 6:30. So maybe if you can raise your hands and then we can go on that one.
Hello everyone, this is Pooja and Nulkar. I run a company named Lemnion Green Solutions and I'm accompanied by Dr. Prasanna Zogdev. We actually work in a sector of water treatment using biological methods, and along with that we also work on restoration of water bodies. Our major area of focus is using biological methods and focusing on nature-based technologies. I would like to ask that if there's anything in terms of ecosystem restoration, as mentioned by Nulkar sir and Madhu sir. If you're focusing on water body based restoration, anything that has to do with aquatic restoration, we would like to be a part of it. Along with that, if you're also focusing on carbon sequestration, which is in coherence with water treatment, so we would like to be a part of that again, because our major area of focus at Lemnion is focusing on recycling of water, balancing of nutrients, and then probably using the water for various purposes, let's say for landscaping and gardening. So yeah, that's what I would like to put forth here. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, sequestration removal from water bodies is something you missed in the report, so maybe you can help us with that. Professor Pethe?
Yeah, I'm Abhay Pethe. I used to be the director of Mumbai School of Economics and Public Policy. Currently, I am the little closer. Mic close. Yeah, currently I am the special advisor to the Vice Chancellor of Gokhale Institute, Ajit, who was here. I have three specific points, actually just 1 point and 2 very minor points. One, when I was listening to the presentation, as an economist, when I hear words like onboarding, sensitizing and making things mandatory, I am a bit cheesed off. The kind of work that we can bring, that is the educational institutions and research institutions, is to look at the nitty-gritty of policy tweaks, and there was some mention about the building control regimes and all those DCRs and stuff like that, where we can suggest reforms and tweaks that would incentivize people to do that, rather than make it mandatory, because mandatory business always leads to supervised vision, and we know that our state capacity currently simply does not exist to carry it through. Number two, the awareness part of it. I think Gurudas already was talking to me the other day and he wants to do that in symbiosis. We can do that with our students to begin with and then maybe we can take it off. And the third thing is the meta idea, which is already what you have done through the collectives and documentation of best practices and what people are already doing all over. If suppose educational institutions like GIP could at least document the best practices and interventions that are already happening in Pune on various things along the lines that you are talking about, the 7 pilot projects, even that would help. The two very minor points, one is what Mr. Chockalingam referred to, something which is common knowledge that most ULBs lack the power, but within PMRDA, if you have one or two, which is PMC, PCMC and so on, then it is easy to think along the lines of what we have already, the MEDCL, which can empower the others by bringing them together and take them along within the group. And I think PMRDA is the correct seat when we discuss climate. And finally, a very minor but I think almost an optical point, but which is very, very important in the little experience I have had with the government. Anytime you set up cells, they are ignored. Please think of some other word. Think of them as a department or a section or whatever. Don't call them cells. Cells will mean one table, one chair, one person and ignore. Thank you.
Yeah, you can go to the next person. If you would like to give comments here, we have time till 6:30. Then please raise your hand. We can come over.
We are from College of Engineering, Pune. Myself is Professor Derasdar. We can connect to this activity in a small way. Already we have done some work also. That's what we want to share with you. This is CO2 emission calculations and whatnot. Basically, we are related to the infrastructure projects, where the transport is the main thing. During construction, we have done the studies. The studies are related to RMC, the location of plant, the distance traveled by TM, which concrete pump is to be used, how much time the pump is getting operated, and how much emission, like concrete pump truck mounted, concrete pump with the help of that tower crane, how do we do? In that one we have done the scientific study, and the study is available with us, we can share with you. And it has a long impact. This thing we can have more studies also. This is done on our own site, because master students are available with us, that is our strength. And these issues are there, so we have correlated and did it. Another studies which could be a common to share with you people. Concrete means cement, and cement means factory production. A lot of issues, CO2 emission and this thing, a large portion is getting contributed. So can we think of reducing the cement? So many things are available already. Talking best material, replacing cement and whatnot. But we have one more thing here. The material graphene, we use it in concrete without changing the purpose of concrete, strength of concrete, use of concrete. It's the same, it will serve the purpose. We reduce 45% cement content and we use a graphene in that one. Right? Graphene is a new material. There we have tested in our laboratory. We confirm the engineering properties, whether it is working well or not. So we compared and we saw that yes, it is a promising material. It is a costly material. Today we need to look at the cost, or economics is a time dependent issue, how the things are there. But it saves the cement. So cement and its chronology of saving, connecting to your CO2 emissions. So there is a lot of, gray area where we can think and that can be converted into policy or some compulsion or some rules through these local bodies. So similar project, we can take it forward if you have this thing, because just making policy and getting its confirmation. So for confirmation, we see the experiment, we give you the guarantee or assurance that this will work this way. The quantification of the claim can be done by technical institution and you can take help of this thing. That is what our submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Bhagwat, would you like to go next? Yeah. And then we can come to you.
I'm Dr. Bhagwat. I'm from Symbiosis University. So we have already done a couple of studies for this particular PIC initiative which relate to EVs and logistic hub in around PMR region. We definitely can contribute for this next piece in terms of conducting some kind of surveys for electric vehicles or even residential surveys that is required for phase 2 that we are targeting in this particular study. Also in terms of business model for electric vehicles as well as some kind of study related to electricity consumption and utilization. This is what we can contribute in terms of study. And one observation that I have regarding this particular presentation is one of the important sector, which is transport, which contribute to almost 23% in terms of emission. We are focusing mainly in a phase 2 studies mainly about electric vehicles. By way of infrastructure, we have already constructed, Pune is already getting constructed of metro line. So it is very essential that connectivity and uses of metro is very, very essential, because in India also we have success as well as failures of metros. We have seen Delhi metro as a hugely successful model, and some of the metros in some of the cities are not that successful. So getting metro as a successful is dependent upon various other factors. Somebody has already mentioned about the last mile connectivity and all. So all such surveys are very, very essential to basically improve the uses of metro, and with the uses of metro, a lot of emission will automatically go down. If a lot of people use metro, definitely vehicles will be come out of the road and emission will definitely go down. So I think we should see that how metro will be very, very successful in Pune, and that will contribute to less emission. That is my submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bhagwat. And we have given an analysis on what is the footprint of using PMPML buses and using the metros. It's there in the report. Yeah, would you like to go next? And then we move to that's
Good evening. This is Manik Danodkar. I'm heading the Center for Waste Resource Management at Symbiosis International University. And just to give brief introduction about our center, we are a state government empaneled technical agency for implementation of waste to energy projects in the Maharashtra state. We are working in 4 districts, basically on solid waste management and waste to energy projects. That's why I would like to, and we were also part of TCS Sustainathon as technical experts. As here we have Dinanatji. So I will just concentrate on objective 5 of this report, that is reduction of CO2 emissions by waste management. Where Mr. Mehta had already mentioned a lot many things. Biogas cannot be seen as a biogas energy plant, it can be biogas fertilizer plant, which was the BGFP scheme launched by Ministry of New and Renewable Energy in 2009. And under that scheme, I was the first one to commission, I could get the opportunity to commission the first plant in the country near Nashik. So that happened to be, and there was a business model it was developed to convert biogas into CNG and biogas based fertilizers. So I would like to bring certain points, what already Mr. Mehta had mentioned, that instead of thinking of RE, renewable energy implementation or new schemes, existing infrastructure on biogas can be efficiently revived first. So I have done the third-party inspection of biogas plants in PMC, where I have noted that many emissions are in the form of methane from the biogas plant itself. The methane is not being potentially used to convert it into energy. So if you can reduce those first, convert those existingly operating plants in an efficient manner so that the efficiency goes beyond 75-80% and we harvest the energy. And there is not a single plant in the, I'll talk about PMC or PMC area or PMR area, that utilizes biogas digestate as a potential manure. No digestate is used to convert it into potential fertilizer. So there is PROM, one mentioned here, the PROM can be developed. I have a startup, I'm entering a startup which is registered at TBI Grant Incubator, which is converting. I have developed the formulations for him from using biogas digestate, and now these are available on Amazon and many other states are being sold fertilizers. So similar kind of waste valorization from the wasted material can be brought in, which can reduce a lot of carbon emissions and carbon footprint. Secondly, decentralization of plants. Biogas, power generation from biogas is not something that can be recommended as crude biogas will generate only 2 units per cubic meter of energy. Instead, if we can find out some low-cost bio-CNG converting technology, if the biogas is converted into bio-CNG, then there is a potential to generate up to 9 units per cubic meter of biogas, 9 electrical units from 1 cubic meter of biogas. So that is one another thing that can be thought of.
So if you have any other comments that we can
I just last point what Mr. Dinanath had mentioned, there is need of lot of awareness creation, so that can be taken into account with we are already associated with Janwani and EPCC and so on so forth. So these people can be brought in, and a lot of waste generation from the aquatic waste. So which PMC spends crores of rupees on removal of water hyacinth. That can be utilized in water treatment and waste valuation developing products, which is nowadays just lying there and contributing to the pollution environment. So we would like to contribute as a research consultant or technological partner into DPR evaluation, identifying suitable technologies for implementation into this, and monitoring these projects from technical point of view. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, sir. May I request Dr. Magesh to share his comments?
Hello everyone, my name is Magesh Nandagopal. I am from the National Chemical Laboratory. We contributed to this report and I also have a few comments to make. So how can an organization like NCL help? This is a challenging problem that requires a lot of innovation. And we are a technology developer and a deployer as well. So we are working on a range of technologies, including hydrogen generation, storage, utilization, fuel cells for stationary mobile applications, sodium ion, lithium ion battery, new generation of solar cells, and so on. So that is one area where we can contribute. And utilization of captured CO2 is one thing that we can contribute to. Second thing is the plugging into our innovation ecosystem. So we have a large innovation ecosystem around NCL. So we have a technology business incubator, we have funding schemes. So if there is an entrepreneur or an innovator who comes in, we can support them and guide them and plug them into our innovation ecosystem and deliver these projects as well. So we are a developer as well as a deployer in that angle. We facilitate deployment, not internally but facilitate deployment. And the third part is the helping out in policy studies. So for example, contribution to this report. So we come from a technical background, but we don't look at just from research and development point of view. We look at also from how it can be deployed. Is it feasible? What is the technology readiness level? What other partners do you need to bring in? So we need to club all this and make an informed decision. So the analysis that we did for this report also considers all these factors before we recommend a particular idea to be deployed. As far as to answer your questions in that, as in the list you put out, I have a few suggestions. In the green buildings part, there is the building integrated photovoltaics. This is something that is coming up in a big way. There are many innovations that are happening in India where the entire windows and the facades are converted into photovoltaic cells. And actually there is Google's headquarters is coming up in Bangalore, and that is one of the largest facilities to deploy this. There's a company called Saint Gobain which does it. So we can make those connects and we can help out in that area as well. A couple of our research organizations are also working in this area, not us, but we are plugged into that. And second is the use of CO2 for concrete curing. And it can deploy it can trap a lot of CO2 and store it for hundreds of years. And similarly, using carbonation of industrial waste and construction waste, that is also another way of sequestering CO2. Talking about bio-waste, I would like to point out that Pune PMR has a large presence of sugar factories. And sugar factories produce this sugarcane press mud, which is a great bioresource to deploy to generate biogas. And also, when we are talking about biogas from bio-waste, we should also look at biochar. Burning this bio-waste in a pyrolysis plant and deploying that biochar as a fertilizer or as a booster. So that should also be integrated into it. And when there are very few point sources of CO2 within Pune region. So if you find out these point sources like a fermentation plant or a sugar plant and you're able to capture the CO2, we have technologies that we can convert it into methanol and into DAP and so on. And we will be happy to help make those connects to set up those plants to make that happen. So with that, I will, so thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nagesh. Yeah, Mr. Santosh, would you like to go next?
I'm Santosh Lagwani from Prakriti Sustainable Solutions. I was part of the initial status study, and I would like to contribute in point number 2 and 3 especially, the smart microgrids. We being into renewable energy solar, we have already built some microgrids in Uttar Pradesh, in some villages. So smart microgrids, especially for the rural areas, that is one point which we would like to focus upon. And the second point is, as rightly mentioned by some of this thing about the last mile connectivity for the success of the metros. So there, the auto rickshaws, what Pandit sir also mentioned about. So there, how about going for the solar plus electric auto rickshaw is one concept which I would definitely like to work upon quite a lot, because it will serve a lot of purposes, mainly from the it can be from the retrofitting point of view. Of the existing rickshaws can be retrofitted, and that can be one interesting project which I would like to work upon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we have comments from Mr. Karandikar next?
Hello, good evening. Alvan Karandikar. I am member of PIC but was not part of this particular study. I am into solar energy consultancy, and right now I am working with 6 states in India on strategizing their climate action plan, mainly focusing on energy action plan. Because you may be knowing that many states, or actually most of the states, have taken their own targets for either RE or overall climate action. On this, I would like to say that most of the things that have been mentioned here, I will focus on RE mainly, or energy. So because you said this is only a draft list of pilot projects, I am daring to comment on this, that maybe you will like to revisit some of the pilot projects that you have planned here. Mainly I am talking about number 2 and 3. Why I am saying this, I will also tell you the logic behind it. Actually, there are so many policies, regulations and strategies or even schemes available using which we can achieve much more than having these pilot projects, even in PMRDA region. So if we can focus on that how to make people aware of existing policies, existing schemes and programs, how to make other stakeholders also aware that they need to do this, and then have different stakeholders come together, we can achieve much more than what has been mentioned here, but that we can discuss later also. Many people have talked about awareness. Yes, definitely awareness related to all these policies, regulations, but also somebody said best practices sharing. Because now listening to so many initiatives by so many organizations, I am really wondering what was your business as usual case. Whether that has taken into consideration all these initiatives that are there or those were not there. So light comment aside, but yeah, so many things are happening which we know only because we have come here, and many other stakeholders who may be interested, they may not be knowing all these initiatives. So that can be one initiative where repository of all the initiatives related to climate change or related to carbon neutrality or net zero, that can be actually made available to general public, but at least to interested stakeholders. Lastly, I would like to say that there are many factories or companies within PMRD region who have their own targets, because by 2025 they have targets like RE100 or RE50. So whether we can take initiative and support those to achieve that, because many industries don't really know how to achieve that RE100 or RE50, and those are their targets because they are either MNCs or they have some export obligations where they are required to do this. So those are actually low-hanging fruits, I would say, where we can achieve much more only by linking them, making them aware, and maybe facilitating few of the things. And as I said, and as Professor Mallik knows, wherever possible, I am available to help in technology, policy, consultancy, of course, time permitting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arvind sir.
From Gokhale Institute, Dr. Preeti Mastaka. I have a slight edge over Dr. Ranade because I have been with the Institute for a long time. So, to pick up, first of all, compliments to Professor Mallik, wonderful initiative from your department. To pick up from where Dr. Chockalingam you requested, is we do have a public policy department in Gokhale Institute. It's just been newly installed. So and there was, I think you also mentioned, so the incentives and fines system, economists design it. As you know, it's been, for all climate change, it has been designed by economists, and we do that. So we can help there. I think Mr. Arvind Kumar, our commissioner had also asked what to do. The EV buses are just standing there. How do we make everybody use it? So that is where we come in. We can guide you there. The other points, number 5 and number 7. That is where we have done work in and where we can help in. Reducing carbon emissions for waste management, carbon neutrality cell, assessing carbon, and then we go one step ahead as economists. We give you the monetary value of all of this. So when you have done it, probably you are getting now all of these assessments in carbon, yes, equivalent, or methane also becomes carbon equivalent later on. However, all this valuation, we can give you the amount that you are actually contributing by doing this work. So the valuation part comes from us. And then from conducting local surveys and setting targets, we are awesome at that. Gokhale Institute is just too good at that. We have also got expertise in DPRs. Word of caution for DPRs is it can take a long time when it is, I've been with the NGT as an expert member and on various bodies. DPRs take a long time. So if you want a very succinct and fast work, that is something we do. And what else was there? There was also the social engineering and social innovation was very interesting in the report. And we have published work in that. And where exactly we can help, that is also, we've seen actual work done in Maharashtra where it has been successful. That was it. DPR, valuations, public policy, that's about it.
Thank you very much, ma'am. A lot of collaborating points there with Gokhale Institute. May I now request Mr. Ravi Pandit to please share your comments.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to bring forward the point related to how water contributes to the carbon emissions. Nearly 20% of electricity usage is for water pumping. Water pumping, which is for the use of extracting groundwater, is still a question mark, because we estimate, as per our studies along with Aquadam, that 4 TMC is the groundwater abstraction every year in the city of Pune. There are about 60,000 buildings, there are about 25 on a project which is by the Pawar. We are reviving 5 water bodies in that. We will be soon working with PCMC and PMR also in some of these areas. The other point is the number of trips which are taken by private water tankers to supply water to the residential as well as industrial complex. So it was about 2 lakh trips was what was estimated by PMC for their water tanker supply annually. That's only for the water supply done by PMC through the water tankers impaneled by them. Now if you have look at private water tankers, again there is an estimate about 4,500 private water tankers are running in the city of Pune, which is actually much more than the PMP1 buses which we have in the city. So if that kind of carbon emissions are being generated by these water tankers, then it's a high time that we need to get them in control. That's all my side. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to give comments here? Shalvi, would you like to give some comments?
I'm Vaishali from Climate Collective Pune Environmental Foundation, as well as President of Avund Vikas Mandal and Trustee of Mission Groundwater. So I was a part of a water and energy nexus project, the part of this particular PP project, as well as coordinating with all the bureaucrats of PCMC, PMC, then PMRDA. So from my stake, I would like to again connect with all the bureaucrats and again about the awareness part, because it's a really last 22 years I am connected with the citizens of Pune for all the awareness and connectivity. So that is a major thing, but again each and every stakeholder has to be a part of it. Closely working with all the objectives what we have planned, being a part of a CCP. Thank you everyone.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you everyone for giving your comments and suggestions. Professor Mallik, would you like to give the concluding remarks?
Yeah. So this has been a wonderful get-together. The purpose of this roundtable was not just to showcase what we have done and what we want to do, but also hear from many of you as to how you see and look at the problem and how individually or in your own group and organization there are many things happening that can contribute to this. So I always say that climate change, global warming is a world problem. It's a global problem. Having said that, invariably all the solutions are local. All the actions are local. And the more of the local actions can combine together, unite together, then of course the momentum picks up. It's the principle of coherence. I'm a laser technologist, so I believe in coherence. What we are trying to list out here is the kind of projects that we would like to take, because you must have noticed that while we have a 2030 target for making Pune carbon neutral, it's difficult that will happen unless we have some miraculous breakthrough in technology-assisted carbon sequestration or carbon removal. But short of that, what we need to really do is to narrow the gap between the emission and sequestration capacity. And that's what we have talked about here. The very important aspect of this whole dialogue has been the boxes below, that the way that we think that we can go forward, the first 2-3 boxes are where the public, the individuals, the organizations like PIC can make a difference. The last 3 boxes are where the stakeholders have to come in and take ownership. So what we are really looking for is that the stakeholders, the decision makers, take ownership. They buy into the ideas that we have developed over the years, they become the champions who will want to take this forward and make it happen. PIC is a think tank. Essentially, therefore, we cannot go into the project implementation phase. But we can certainly guide, we can certainly provide mentorship, we can even provide monitoring and continuous, how shall I say, the energy for doing things. But this roundtable is really for sharing the thoughts so that the fervor and the energy with which we have pursued this problem to make Pune carbon neutral as soon as possible. You must have noticed, some of you, that the title has changed from making Pune carbon neutral to rapid decarbonization. This is acceptance that carbon neutrality is not all that easy. Having said that, the technology is growing, awareness is growing, and like what you say, that when you look at the forest, don't miss trees. So these are the small trees that are there all over, not only just Pune, but all over India, all over the world. There are lots of people, lots of groups that are working and realizing that unless we really try to keep the temperature rise, growing to below 2 degrees centigrade, then we are all into problem. There is nobody known to spare. Of course, the poor will suffer more, but nobody is going to be spared. There is also an awareness that in order to keep the global temperature below 2 degree average temperature, mind you, when we say average 2 degree, it means some are cooler and some are hotter. I think most of you know that the Arctic is already hot almost by 4 degrees centigrade. Our own Indian Ocean is warming up by more than 2 millimeters per year. So things are happening in different areas in different extent. And having said that, what India can do will make a huge difference because we are a large country, large population, although our per capita emission is very low. What PMR can do will set an example for what other cities in India can do. So what India can do really depends upon maybe the largest populated 20 cities or urban centers. It is from that point of view that we are trying to demonstrate what can be done. In the last meeting, where many such people were there, experts were there, we realized that 2030 goal was kind of appearing to be too distant and not attracting immediate attention. Therefore, we have to redefine 2025 goals that would make us march forward towards the 2030 goal, 2040 goals, 2050 goals. As a nation, our Prime Minister has said that by 2070, India will become net carbon neutral. That is a political statement, that's a strategic statement which includes, takes into account everything that a Prime Minister must look at. But as luck would have it, neither I nor Prime Minister may be there by 2070. So we must do what we can do today and tomorrow. And I believe, I'm a defense scientist, a diplomat, a security expert who has converted into this area. So with that wider domain and whatever age, I believe that India can become net carbon neutral by 2047, which is 100 years since we got our independence. I would like to take this opportunity to announce here that PIC will be conducting a 2-day seminar, conference on this subject of how to make India climate secure. I'm using the word climate secure and not carbon neutral because climate security involves many things that touches upon people, upon the country, upon the foreign policy, upon the economics and so on and so forth. One other thing that comes out through the discussion today is that unless we find win-win situation, win-win solutions, nothing much will happen because we will keep talking, people will agree with us, but really what matters is gain and loss. Money gain, money loss. Unfortunately, since 1935, the World War time, we have got into the practice of getting hooked on to the GDP. GDP was meant for something else. It was coming out of the World War situation where there was economic growth required, there was economic progress required, and that was the measure for it. We have already reached a point where perpetual growth may not be possible. In fact, perpetual growth will be our invitation to destruction, where we are already talking about mankind may not be surviving beyond the current century. So obviously we will not be chasing GDP forever. Having said that, then what? And that is where the economists must come in and help us define a measure that not only defines the monetary transaction, but it defines the health of the individual well-being, it defines the health of the earth in terms of global warming or climate change. So we need to do things differently. Not that we will do different things, but as Shukir had said, smart people do things differently. So I think that is the kind of challenge that we have to have. I will not take too much time, we are almost reaching about 6:30 time. I'm extremely grateful to Mr. Chockalingam for giving us the guidance and giving us full support in terms of not just today but even in the future. YASHADA is a unique organization that brings best of brains together and trains them further. Here in this hall today, I think we have got very rich reservoir and capacity of knowledge, analysis and action. So it is these kind of things where we put our minds together that things start happening. We are committed, we in the PIC and the associated colleagues and friends are committed to reach 2030 with the kind of curve that we showed right in the beginning, where the emission curve will start dipping. That's the beginning. If the emission curve start dipping by 2030, then we have won the race in a way. Half the race is in that making the emission curve start dipping. That is the message that I like to carry. I'm extremely grateful for I'm seeing me, my team and everybody else. We have been very lucky to have such a large gathering of intelligent and thinking minds together. Many good suggestions have come, many questions have come. We have recorded everything. Difficult for me to address each and everything. But it is my promise that in PIC, in conjunction with our collaborators in Climate Collective Pune and many others who are with us, we will pursue this with as much energy as possible. And with the help of you all, and with the help of leaders like Dr. Chockalingam, I think we are looking forward to a very fruitful next 3 years to prove by 2025 through the pilot projects that these pilot project objectives can indeed be achieved. And that if we do that, then that will be start of our convincing not only the public but ourselves that yes, the solutions are there and these are the workable solutions. And nothing succeeds like success. So this is the interim success that we are chasing, and 2030 is the next phase. 2040 and 2047 will be the final phases. With this, I think I'd like to close the session with the permission of the chair, unless sir you want to say something. No. Thank you very much, and the vote of thanks I hand over to my friend.
Yeah, I guess everybody is now very eager to have modaks and pedas. So we'll conclude this event like Professor Mallik said. Thank you all for coming here one day before Ganpati begins. Heartiest thanks to all. And if you would like to give any more feedback, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.